Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. Greetings from Barcelona, Spain. It's almost wine time here, and everybody talks about wine in the chat. So you're getting me excited for that. But after this amazing discussion. So today we are talking about board of directors, diversity, and inclusion. And I know this is not an easy topic, but I think it's interesting and important to discuss. And we only have 25 minutes, and we're going to experiment, as Katrina says. So let's see how that works. And we might only scratch the surface a little bit. But, anyways, we'll pay attention to that. And let's just start with that. So, as she said, we're going to experiment a little bit. So, there should be a link in the chat very shortly, which means you can click on it and join our discussion. So, because we are doing a fishbowl, and if you know a fishbowl from an in-person conference, you know what that means. It means you basically have two circles, and we are now the inner circle, us four, and you all are the outer circle. And maybe one of you guys want to join us, want to join the discussion, and you can when you click on the link that is in the chat. So whenever you feel like you want to ask a question, you want to make a statement, just click on the link, and we'll put you on live. So before we do that, and I hope somebody will join us later on, let me introduce this fantastic panel that we have here today. So let me start with David. David is the founder of the Value Graphics Project, the world's first accurate map about what we really care about. And you'll hear about what that means later on. So stay tuned. Then we have Tim. Tim is the executive director of the World Federation of Science Journalists. He has 30 years of experience being a journalist, and he was a board member of that association himself before. So he knows what the feeling is to be a board member. The World Federation of Science, Journalist Science, has 67 members from 51 countries and an extended membership of over 10,000 organizations. And then we have Meredith. Meredith is the executive director of Student Energy, and she works effectively with the energy industry, governments, and organizations to create space for young people to lead in the transition to a sustainable and equitable energy future. So, welcome to this fantastic panel, everybody. And I see the link is now put in this is in the chat. So whenever when we discuss, you want to join us, just click there, and the tech team will put you on stage with us. So let me start with asking a couple of questions to the panelists. Let me start with David. So, David, board of directors are representatives of an association, basically, of the membership. Can you explain us in your thoughts on how association boards should be put together according to your ideas?
I'd love to. Thanks for having me over. Nice place you have here. It's fun to come and visit. Welcome to my big beige box of a hotel room that I'm staying in right now. The research we've done is to build this first ever global database of shared human values that's segmentable for 180 countries around the world. And it's given us a map, a kind of record of what our values are. And the reason this is important is because our values drive all our behaviors and decisions and emotions for every human everywhere on Earth. And now we kind of know what's going on. We can look at it and see and figure out what's going on with different groups of people. So my comments about board diversity and about how boards should be coming together are based on this sociological perspective of what our core human values are, what really matters to people in here. And so here's my thoughts around board diversity. I have a term I like to use. I just call it deep diversity. I think that it's important for us to understand that what we're engaging with now, this journey we're beginning while we talk about board diversity and diversity of all our organizations, not just boards, is a beginning of this journey. And that it's important for us to look at all of the kinds of ways we can build diversity into an organization. But if we want deep diversity, which maybe it's the second step, maybe it's the third step, maybe it's the first step for really ambitious groups, we have to align our boards not only with the outward-facing characteristics of diversity that we're continuing to have these conversations about, but with what's inside. So I think step one is to understand the values, the shared values of your membership, and perhaps even the industry that your membership represents, and then build a board that's based on those kinds of ideas. We need to make sure that we have diversity of values around the table too, and not just a group of people who are identical to each other, except for we have our female and we have our gay guy. I can say that because I'm gay. We have our, we can't just make this about ticking the boxes. And I think the way to go beyond that is to understand what people's true core human values really are, match that to the membership, and then apply the layers of diversity that we're talking about very publicly and openly and beautifully all around the world right now. We got to do both. So it's deep diversity is what I'm out there trying to get people to consider.
Interesting, interesting. And I see Tim nodding. So feel free to jump directly answer to what David was saying. But before that, I also have a general more question for you, Tim. Because I saw that the board of directors for the World Federation of Science Journalists is pretty diverse, and the majority are women, which I found really remarkable. So are there special criteria in your bylaws, let's say, are there special criteria that have to be applied, or how you select the board of directors for the association?
So the short answer to that is no. We're an open church. It's and it always has been that way. The beauty of this organization is that we came to the party diverse. As you pointed out, we represent organizations in 51 different countries, huge diversity of background. And yet, and this is why I was nodding with what David said, because there's always an interface between the common values that people all bring to the table and the distinctions between those values. So at one level, amongst this broad diversity of cultures, of countries, of national interests, of politics, everything, there's a common interest in science. There's a common interest in science writing. There's a common interest in journalism and free expression. And this is shared. I remember it as a young journalist first getting involved with this type of organization and being in the room and thinking, this is my tribe. I love these people. They're so nerdy. They care deeply about, space telescopes and how much they cost and who builds them and so on and so forth. At the same time that we have this shared culture where we all talk about the same science fiction novels and issues in the global community of science, technology, and medicine, there are national distinctions. People bring different things to the table. And they don't necessarily fit the traditional boxes, which is the best part, which is why having it as an open church is the way to go. Because if we did try to create categories and say, we'll have so many of these folks, so many of those folks, you box yourself in and you're not ready for the future. The different countries have evolved at different rates in the sense of all of these issues, the way they approach science, how their politics has changed, their economies have changed, and so on. And we're ready to absorb that as a board. And I very much, I wanted to note this before I forget it. I very much love Sheila's point about intra-board mentorship. We are an open church in the sense that we don't just expect senior people to show up. If there's someone young who says, wow, this looks like a cool crowd, I'm going to jump in. And, they may be in the Silicon Valley, I'm going to move fast and break things kind of mentality. That's okay. They're welcome there because there is a form of mentorship that takes place. And again, I've experienced this directly in my own career. And I did move fast. I broke a lot of things and it benefited me. And now I'm on the other side where I have all these people mentoring me, that I'm mentoring, which I sometimes can't believe that they even listen to me. But, it's amazing. This is how this progresses. It's the circle of life.
Yeah.
Can I jump back in there for a second and just reinforce? And then Meredith, you haven't even had a chance to talk yet. I'm already talking for the second time. It's like I'm having 2 donuts. You haven't even had one. I just wanted to reinforce something that you said. This database we've built, we have 600,000 surveys around the world now with more accuracy and confidence you need for a Harvard PhD. And what we've discovered is that there's only 56 core human values, and that they vary from one region, one country to another, but it's only 56. So we're far more similar to each other than we would like to believe. But within those 56 different values that can be driving how humans behave and how they feel, there's lots of room for variation. I like to talk about it like a piano keyboard. It's the same 56 notes playing the songs, but some people like jazz and some people a little bit more into hip hop, and so there's the similarities are there, and those cultural differences have room to grow as well. I think what you're doing sounds fantastic.
Good. Okay. And before we continue talking about that, I would like to give the chance to Meredith to say something as well, because in her association, I think because the Student Energy, it's a membership organization, and correct me if I'm wrong, for like young people, and I think this is so remarkable, and I feel that a lot of associations, they struggle with engaging the younger members, or some associations are even dying out because there are no young people coming up to enter the membership, not even talking about entering the board of directors. So do you have any tips, basically, what can we learn from your association? How do we engage more with young people, and how can we make sure that they also want to join the board of directors, and it's not something like, okay, they are only seniors, they would never listen to me, etc. So what tips do you have for the rest of us association people?
Yeah, thank you for that. So to clarify, yeah, Student Energy, we're a network of 50,000 young people in 120 different countries, and then we also have our own board of directors. And so I think in terms of youth engagement, I mean, this is something I work with groups on all the time. I work primarily with the energy industry and then other intergovernmental bodies like the UN. And honestly, there are a few core tips, but a primary issue is really creating a space for young people. I think it's easy to assume that people can come to you and kind of be part of things, but often boards are really overlooking the fact that they have their own kind of internal ways of operating, that they need to do capacity building and skill building, specifically on the board and what your role on a board may be. They need to do mentorship. I'm glad mentorship has been acknowledged. Really, co-mentorship is what I emphasize. So both creating opportunities for board members to learn from young people and learn from their perspectives and really be taking in their ideas, but also mentorship on, how boards work, how they take in ideas, and what it would take to change things. And I think a common issue I see time and time again is people will create one board seat for a young person or a person of color or indigenous person and kind of expect that to be what they need to do. But often if you're only taking on one person, they will immediately feel quite isolated. And so it's important to be taking on more than one person if you're trying to take on new people and help them be a bit of a collective and feel more supported within that. And then I think also it's important to recognize that taking on new types of people and actually making space for people requires resources. It often requires funding, maybe honorariums, depending on what your board looks like, especially when we're looking at people who have traditionally been excluded from these opportunities, which is most boards. Most boards have systemically excluded people in the past. Whether or not it's the current board members who have done this. And so being able to create new space also means really thinking through equity mechanisms that it'll take to integrate young people. And then finally, make sure you're following up on all the ideas you get. They might not be ideas that you can take on, but that's another common issue is people come in, they will express new ideas or kind of different ways of thinking about things. But if nobody responds or takes them up on it, they're very likely to quit within 6 months after that, or become really combative. And either way, it's not really a positive situation. And so being sure that you're really honoring those new values and those new ideas that you're taking in. Because as David said, a lot of the core values aren't different, but often how they're being expressed is different. The level of urgency with which they're being expressed is different. And it's important to recognize that you're taking that on really intentionally.
Yeah, no, Good point. I think like if you give young people a voice, make sure that you try to implement their ideas, or at least that you note them and not just ignore them. Because young people have a lot of ideas, and they come with a different mindset maybe to the table than other generations. So let's give them a voice. Let's make them heard. I think that is really important, and I totally agree with you. And I see Ronnie's comment here. And again, if anybody wants to join, Ronnie, if you want to join our fishbowl and make your comment live, feel free to do so. You can join the inner circle, so to say. And she's saying, for her association, it's very, very difficult to get young people and teachers involved, and certainly not on the board. We are really struggling in so many areas. They lost 8 board members on our membership, and the membership is now at 50%. And she's worried about that the association might die out. So Ronnie, also, if you want to touch base with Meredith afterwards, how to maybe change that a little bit, also with David, maybe he can provide you a bit of ideas on how to maybe structure your membership a bit differently and look at that in a different way, just to save it. I think they are more than happy to discuss further. And Ronnie is also saying that she loves the comment about taking on one person of color, one indigenous person. We have been doing that, but they have never been members at all. We try to get them involved in projects on the board, but they just quit because they never understood the commitment. Okay, then of course, if you want to step up and you want to be part of the board of directors, it is a commitment, of course, right? So it's a voluntary role most of the times, but you have to commit time to it. But it is something very, very valuable for the entire membership of the association, as well. And I'm already talking too much, so if anybody of you guys wanna comment on that, feel free to do so. And there is an audience member, and I think it is Ronnie. Is it Ronnie?
Yes, it is. I'm
Hi.
Hi there. I'm kind of getting two feeds, but I'll try to tell you. I'm a member of the Mass Foreign Language Association, and we have been working on the diversity. The 2 years of the pandemic that we had here in Massachusetts, during the 2 years of the pandemic, we had a president who had already all of a sudden become a district supervisor, and she had like kindergarten through 12th grade supervising a lot of teachers not doing what they should, a lot of them quitting. So she kind of had a lot of excuses that we were all too stressed out. And so during that time, I think we made excuses, and it should have been a time when we were all on Zoom. Everybody knew how to use it. The association had it, but we never sat together in small groups and brainstormed. I thought it was a great year to brainstorm. What are things we can do? How can we get people involved again in the order? We never did anything. We had a couple of little meetings. They were, just a couple of reports, and that was it. Another thing, in the president before her, he was very interested in bringing on diversity, and he wanted his definition of diversity was a person of color. So we started doing that, but it seemed like what we were doing was we were just picking these random people. And we'll find someone, and we'd find somebody. They almost, to me, they seemed like they were token people, which bothered me a lot. They had never been members. They didn't know anything about the association. I think they even did not understand the time commitment that that they had. We don't just sit around doing nothing. We have professional development, we have workshops we offer, we have webinars, we have a newsletter. So I think that many of them didn't. So they came onto the board, and this year we lost them. They all quit. We have 8 new people on a board of directors of 12. That's really scary. We usually have 4 going off, 4 going on, but this year we have 8. And again, 3 of the new people, again, trying to meet that quote diversity, which I agree with you. It was a very narrow narrow definition of diversity that he got us looking at. We're bringing on these people. They've never been members. They have to join to become members, to become on the board. And it's really, really a strange thing that we're doing that. Yeah.
Ronnie, this
Yeah.
is exactly
Yeah.
what I started with here, that
Mhm.
in order to get past what you've referred to as
Yeah.
tokenism,
Yeah.
we need to look at deep diversity. We need to look at getting a group of people together who have different perspectives on what's important in life and what's important in the world and what's important in the way they see things. We have to apply the layers of outward facing diversity that are necessary as well. We have some wrongs to right, but we can't just do it by, I'll tell you one quick story and then we'll move on. I got a phone call from an unnamed organization a while ago who asked me if I would come onto their board. Never heard of them, don't really understand their industry. So I asked why. And they said, well, because you're Métis, which for those of you who aren't from Canada, it's an Indigenous tribe here, and you're gay. So we'd like to have that on our board. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be the guy who comes and gives you 2 tokens for one, 2 for the price of one. This isn't appropriate. So we need to get to that point where we're understanding the values of the organization and building diversity. Yes, with a view to all those other aspects, but primarily we need to understand who we have in the room, not what we have in the room. And I think that's the distinction.
It's when trying to establish a new association, how can you engage the positive people who will allow others to grow and nurture the community versus the negative people who will be trying to take control and still be inclusive? This is really my dilemma today, and you guys can decide who wants to take that.
Maybe I'll speak quickly as I might have to log off here. I think it's really important to be setting kind of ground rules around your association. Also, application processes are very important. Even if you are reaching out to specific people and asking them to apply, it's really important that people are doing this out of their own personal motivation and being there for the right reasons, rather than feeling like they're doing the founder a favor or something of that nature. It really makes a big motivational shift. And then being very intentional about how you're curating things, and you setting some, doesn't necessarily have to be the bylaws, but some ground rules around, we're here for, one of my favorite phrases is no opposition without proposition. So thinking about how do we create positive mindsets within groups that are trying to solve new types of problems.
Perfect. If anybody else wants to jump and say something else, and if not, I think because we are right on time, and the other speakers are waiting already, which is really, really good. So we keep the conversation going. If you want to connect with Meredith, Tim, or David afterwards or another day, you can do so. Their contact details are in the description of this session. And I would like to thank you all for listening to us and joining the discussion. I know it was very, very short and very fast paced, but let's not stop talking about diversity and in board of directors. Let's continue the discussion, and I'll see you next time. And now back to Katrina. Thanks a lot.